nice if I had my agenda for me, wouldn't it? Okay. So good morning, everyone. Today is the first day of February, 2021. The time is 10:03 a.m.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness. Sorry.
That's okay. I don't even have mine on. Okay. And so this is a special meeting for an update from our solid waste organization. And attending our commission is Duncan, Brooks, and Phillips. Do we have any changes to the agenda? None. Moving on. And so joining us is John Phillips, also known as JP, our director, and our chief planning individual, principal planning specialist, Laureen Chaffin. Go right ahead, JP. First item, wood waste from January 2021 wood storm. No, wood storm, right, windstorm.
It's now
Yeah, that's
windstorm.
right. I'm sorry, I got hit by a timber.
Thanks for having us, commissioners. I'm actually going to let Laureen take it away since she does such a wonderful job with facts and figures and statistics. So she's going to take wood waste.
So, Commissioners, as you are well aware, you declared a state of emergency on the 13th, which was the date of the storm. And for purposes of emergency estimates, we had to submit what our damage estimates were on Friday for the state so they could determine what they were going to do. We estimated a total cost to the department of $139,000. How that breaks out was we took the Ramsey tons, so just in the week period of time, so the 13th through the 21st, the Ramsey site took in over 1,550 tons of wood debris. Normal for Ramsey is 180 tons, so it's a significant amount. What helped us there was that we also worked out an agreement with the city of Coeur d'Alene. They were bringing in dump trucks worth of wood. In fact, in just one day, they brought in over 109 tons of wood. So we worked out with the city of Coeur d'Alene that they took their old mill site on Celtice, and that's where they started taking their wood.
Over what period was this again, Lorraine?
Just 1 week period of time.
1 week?
From the 13th through the 21st. So Cannon Hill, our contractor, they came in almost immediately. On the 15th, they started grinding wood. They ground as wood was coming in, and that first grind that they finished on the 21st was over 1,500 tons of wood. So it was the first grind. And then that pile has since grown. So our estimate was the 1,550 actual grind at Ramsey. There were 330 tons at Prairie, which is normal for Prairie is 80 for an entire month. And then we've estimated that the city, the lot that hasn't been ground yet, is probably sitting at 1,550 tons. We also have approximately $4,000 in staff time. So that would be directing traffic, managing the waste, things like that. So yet on Friday, we submitted our estimate is
$139,000. $139,000, okay. Just due to the windstorm?
Directly related to the storm itself, yes.
Okay. Does that take care of the first item?
It does.
Questions?
Questions?
Questions? Leslie, Bill?
No.
No. Good job. Second item, 2021 project updates.
All right. Thank you for having me, commissioners. JP again, or John Phillips for the record. So I just want to give you an update. We have several projects coming up. I've touched on these at the last meeting as well. So currently we're working on rural site power for our Kid Island Bay, our Sunup site, and then also at the Worley site. We're still set to get the power completed in March is the plan, weather dependent, but the parts have been ordered. We're online to take care of that, so we'll continue working on that. Any questions on that one? Okay. A construction project update at Ramsey. We're working on some Z-walls for metal or for recycling that will free up a couple of Z-walls for customers to bring in and unload garbage or general household waste. Should help streamline the process at Ramsey. I have the survey has been taken care of. We scheduled that. Surveyor came in. They're working on that data, and then we'll get that to the engineer. I'm in contact with an engineering firm out of Spokane on the ultimate design. We've submitted a preliminary design, but we're still working on that. It's on schedule, and we should get that wrapped up here before the end of the summer. landfill facilities improvements, there's a 40 by 60 storage building we're going to have to bid the work this spring. Currently, the engineer has recently put together a professional services agreement. Jamila's has reviewed that, and it will be coming before the board here very shortly. So we're still continuing to work on that. Again, that building, we're anticipating completion date by October 15th. We're still on schedule.
Purpose of the building?
Be additional storage. There's a lot of, it's not going to be heated at this point, and it's just gonna have some lights and be a covered area. A lot of things at the landfill need to be covered just so they're not frozen and snowy. Like cover material, which is like a clay material that we use to cover the garbage daily, is nice if it's in a covered area. Also, small machines, things of that nature, plastic sheeting that we use for leachate control. So it'd be mainly a storage building just to make things more accessible year-round, so you don't have to dig it out from under snow.
It also opens up shop space.
Yes.
You can actually work on
Yep.
equipment, so
Yep.
take some of the things that are stored inside the shop, move them over so that there's more space.
Got it. Okay.
We're still working on, with the engineers on, we'll get some, for landfill future expansion, we're gonna need some work on surveying. I consider that part of a project. We'll be removing the dirt ourselves to try to create phase E3. So we'll start getting some grade stakes in place so the county can save money by taking dirt out of the future landfill area and using that for cover. We'll continue working on that. Of course, there's also south cell permitting work that we're taking on this year. I have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow with Kevin from Worley Highway District to try to work out some easement issues, some right-of-way issues that are at the property. I anticipated having that done this month. However, the windstorm really slowed down Worley Highway District. They've been dealing with trees and power lines and all that. So Kevin has that meeting set for tomorrow with Doug Goodwin, and I will be attending. So we'll try to get that taken care of before we continue with the south cell permitting work. And so with that, that pretty much concludes all of our projects coming up.
Wow.
Any questions?
None. Okay. Thank you. Third item, financial strategy overview.
And of course, this will be Laureen taking control of this issue and letting you know how our financial strategy is and what's coming up.
So we talk about the construction projects so that it leads right straight into the financial strategy. I bring this forward about this time every year. It's before we do our budgeting so that the board is aware of what's going to come forward in our budget. I've given you copies of this and provided copies for the record. On the front of your sheet is just the highlighted, those are the main construction projects, but I just wanted to make sure because it's color-coded on the document. So you can refer back to that. What we do, this is a combination of a whole bunch of different types of accounting. So it's kind of a little bit tricky and trying to keep it all together in one document that makes a sense. But the purpose for this document is that it's a living financial strategy. It tells us where we're at, how much money we have available to us, what the future is. This strategy represents the major components that are requirements. This is not a wish list. This is we have to do this. We have to have the funding available to do that. It also is a great planning tool in order to take a look at. So if you flip over to the very far end of 2042, the very bottom, you'll see at the way that we're sitting right now that the department would be in the negative with operations funds and a positive in our post-closure dollars. What that's telling you is based on the strategy that we have, which is a 1.5% growth between now and 2042, and no fee changes. If we did nothing and we built all of the things that we need to do, that operationally the solid waste department would have to make a change in our fee structure somewhere along the line in order to get to 2042. Now, I've been quoting 2042 for a very long time. 2042 is
20 years.
or was when the original footprint, what we have permitted, would be filled. So we have a bag of garbage, and as we put the garbage in there, we're getting towards the top. In 2018, we did our life cycle analysis, which is calculations of how much waste we've put in, how much airspace that has taken up, and then using a planning factor. In 2018, up to 2018, we were using a 3% growth. So we were calculating that we would grow overall by 3%.
Excuse me, is that population?
That is tons going
Tons
into the
going in?
land.
Okay.
So in 2018, we recognized that we were greater than the 3% growth in our actual from the time that the landfill opened in 93 to 2018. We finally hit that 4% growth, and we were kind of waffling back and forth. So we changed our planning model to 5% in 2018. What that did is that told us that our life cycle analysis, our bag of garbage, was going to be full in 2037, not 2042. So as we continue to grow, we're watching that. So this year we have part of that dollars that JP was talking about, the grade stakes, the landfill expansion, includes a life cycle analysis update. They'll do a flyover, we'll calculate the tonnage, we'll see what our compaction rates are, and then we'll analyze that and really have a document stamped by the engineers as to when the landfill will be full. That drives everything else that we're doing. So in this strategy, you'll see these areas right here. This is expansion, this is engineering, that's design for the next expansion of the landfill, and then the next year would be the construction. So that would be the footprint for that cell of the landfill. And this strategy that I'm presenting to you right now, that has been moved up by 1 year. I'm going to tell you that potentially we might have to move that up 1 year further based on the information that we get. The landfill this year, the increase to the landfill was a 10% growth. So we hit over 200,000 tons went into the landfill in 2020. That's remarkable given the fact of the lockdown and the things that we're going. Economy-wise, nationwide, you're hearing what a difficult year it was for solid waste in Kootenai County. It was not. We had a lot of people coming in, we had a lot of waste coming in, and we managed all of that. So we have a substantial growth in 2020. We'll take that into consideration with all of the other years, and then we'll be able to present that back. So those two specific strategies here, this is E3, and then this is E4. And then we have a final phase, which is the pinnacle, the pyramid, the top of the landfill. That would be the last phase before we have to build a new footprint, and a completely different landfill, which is what we're permitting for later this year. One of the things that I like to point out is this document also gives you your actuals. So this is the actual spending. This was the beginning balance. When I say beginning balance, that is a combination of operations funds and closure, post-closure restricted dollars. So that is what was available to the solid waste department for everything that we do. At the bottom of the document, I break that out. So you have restricted, closure, post-closure funds.
Got it.
And you have your operations funds. So what we're doing here is each year we're putting money aside. So that is today's users. That's their portion of their $88 solid waste fee. A portion of that goes and gets set aside for their use of the landfill, so that today's users are paying for that future cost. So our future users are not paying for past users' waste. And so that is, each time I bring this to you, we'll talk about that closure, post-closure dollars, and we talk about the fact that, given the fact that the county's policy is to make our asset cash for that future liability, the solid waste fund will continue to grow because that closure, post-closure, with last year's being over $500,000, it's going to continue to grow. It'll be a substantial dollar amount by the time we get to the point where we have to actually close. And then post-closure, by federal statute, that's 30 years. At this point in time, I don't know of any landfill that got out from underneath the 30 years. So they're continuing on, basically because there's methane gas, there's things that you have to monitor after a landfill closes. The second column is what was in our budget. So this is what the board has approved. This is what we're working on. And then this is what we're proposing for our plan. So this is what potentially is coming to the board in the 2022 budget. I did make a slight change for 2022 based on our revenue. I did increase the revenue from my plan growth of 1.5% to a 2%. We maintained about a 4% growth for 2020 in revenue. I try to be very conservative on the revenue side. I have a standard 3% increase for expenses that goes out, which is pretty much what we've been holding to. It just depends on how that waste grows as to whether or not we hit 3% on our increases to waste. So there's a 2% growth for revenue in 2022, which is what I'm projecting, and then a 3% for operational expenses. Our capital purchases, that would be for capital equipment, that's a separate document. We have basically the same amount of time as the strategy, we have our life cycle for pieces of equipment. So we structure out what it is that we're doing. We did make a substantial change to that this year when we scrubbed that with JP and Doug, our operations manager, looking at what we did last time with the compactor. So we purchased a compactor. We've had compactors on site, and then we rebuilt a compactor from the ground up. And that was a substantial savings between the two. But you can't keep rebuilding the same compactor.
Right.
So we've come up with a strategy to do a rebuild, a rebuild. We're also looking at that on some heavy pieces of equipment. So you saw that this year on the dozer. So this year we budgeted for, and you just awarded a bid for a certified dozer rebuild. So that's basically taking that dozer and rebuilding it from the ground up. That is a substantial savings, and we're learning whether or not that rebuild process is going to be sufficient for us to have a good life cycle for that piece of equipment. We'll find out on the dozer, and then we'll look at the other ones. So capital equipment, that's a long-term strategy as well. I can show you that document if you'd like. Our whole goal was to try to take these capital purchases and then even them out so that we don't have those high fluctuations of we're not buying a compactor and buying a D8 dozer in the same year. We're trying to spread those out. That again gives you that kind of that steady flow, and then you'll get into the main part of what it is that, and the reason that we have the solid waste department is to maintain the structures and provide the services that we have. So you'll see that this year we have $550,000 sitting there for the Ramsey site. That is the improvement to the Z-walls. So those are the slots there just outside of the building, and customers can drop their garbage directly into a trailer. What I'm here to tell you today is that Ramsey is seeing a customer count equivalent, sustained, that's equivalent to prior to Prairie's opening.
Wow.
So their highest day in 2020 was 2,450 customers. That was on November 1st, happened to be right after a storm event, but we're sustaining around 2,000 customers a day throughout the year. That's our average for Ramsey, and that's prior to Prairie's numbers. Prairie is still holding its own, and they're running, but that in and of itself talks and shows, is a great picture to show the growth in Kootenai County. So no one's going to stop coming to the Ramsey transfer station. That's very obvious. So we're going to need to do something. The transfer station doesn't fail based on the amount of tons. They're designed to manage and take care of thousands of tons of waste. Where the Ramsey transfer station is starting to fail, and has always been the pinch point for any transfer station, is the number of customers that comes in. They've done a phenomenal job in managing the number of customers. We've done retrofits to that facility. 20 years ago, you came in one gate. Both in and out came in one gate. In 2002, we opened it up. We split the two, the entrance and the exit. We've added Z-walls. We've enlarged the wood pile. There are a lot of things that you can do, but the number one thing that happens at a transfer station is they need to dump their garbage. The only place that they can do that commercially, the backside of the transfer station or inside the building. You can't get more people in to that building. So we are looking at, and we've added into, for our 2022 request, is that we're gonna put some engineering dollars in there to see where we can come up with some efficiencies. We're landlocked, or we're working with a landfill behind us, that adds to all the complexity of what you're gonna do. So we're gonna need to spend some additional engineering funding to see what we can do to open it up, to kind of give Ramsey some relief. You know, you're looking at facing the next thing, which I don't want to do before I retire, which is still a long ways away. JP really doesn't want to do. We don't want to have to site another transfer station in Kootenai County. So everything that we can do to try to get Ramsey the relief. We've been advertising and shifting people to Prairie. There's a lot of things we have to do in order to continue to meet the needs of the citizens, which is that they think garbage is free, and they want to be able to come in and dump it, and they want it quick. And you'll get phone calls, we get phone calls about how long they had to sit in line, and how difficult it was, so on and so forth. So that also covers this dollar amount. This is a placeholder. I have no idea what all they're going to want to do at that transfer station, so that's a placeholder for, based on the fact that the hazmat building cost us $1.2 million. This will be substantially more than that, so that's a placeholder for that dollar amount. Also, this number right here is closure activity. What you've learned, I think, is this board, we put in $1.2 million at the landfill. We covered the side slopes and the top of the original footprint. The reason we did that is for a landfill, for our landfill, I should say, the number one thing that's killer to us is leachate. So water falls from the sky, it hits that garbage, we now have to treat it. We're not connected to a waste treatment facility. We are standalone. Thankfully, Harbs has been taking what they can, but we have to meet strict testing requirements in order for them to take it. If our leachate does not qualify, we have to do something about that. We've pretty much mothballed our evaporators. So we used to use the landfill gas and heat that leachate up and evaporate it off, but we have a 20-year lease with Kootenai Electric, and it takes that gas to run that. We can't really be siphoning it off to take care of our stuff. So we learned quickly that if we cover the areas that aren't going to have garbage and be an open working phase, we cover that, then we're managing our leachate, and that makes a substantial improvement. So as that landfill increases, we're going to need to go in and put that AstroTurf in there. So you'll see that
When it's covered, what's the approximate percent reduction in leachate?
I'd have to refer to.
Well, about.
So that's a pretty complicated question.
Well, I
We do have data on that. I want to
Yeah.
say, this is just gonna be ballpark. I'd have to refer to the actual
Yeah.
document. But I want to say we reduced flows in the old cell by about 50%.
Okay, that's good.
So, but we didn't, of course, cover the entire area.
I
either.
understand.
So,
That
And
was
there
not
is-
that was not a gotcha question. Just
Not a problem. And there is, there will always be some trickle-down theory, but the majority of that water is being diverted off, and then we can treat it as surface water. And that, in and of itself, is a substantial savings to the county. So you'll see that there are several. This is about prior to the construction of E3, prior to the construction of E4, and then the next one is a big one, and it's out there just before we close the landfill itself. So those ones are fairly new. This one, JP and I talked about that. This is, Kootenai Electric has spoken several times. They talked to this board with regards, during the purchase of their building. They talked about wanting to renegotiate the cost or the value of the landfill gas. They've indicated several times, we've done different negotiations, that they're struggling with that process. It isn't as economically feasible. They're not as happy as they're on their rate of return. We do have a 20-year lease with them, 20 years from the date that we started producing gas, which was 2012, so 2032, that lease will end. I anticipate that they probably want to get out of it. And so I put a placeholder in there as to a purchase of that building. is that what I think that they're gonna come up with? I have no idea. But I wanted to make sure that we had something in our long-range strategy that addresses the fact that there is a lease. It's not a permanent agreement for that sale of landfill gas. We do see that that is beneficial. We are starting to see revenue coming in. It's about between $8,000 to $10,000 a month, depending on what is coming in or shutdowns. So when they have a shutdown, then obviously we aren't generating revenue. It's not a big dollar amount in the grand scheme of things, but it is important to kind of be thinking about that versus just burning off what you could get. And then we also have the greenhouse gas or the energy credits. So each month we earn the energy credits. Right now, Kootenai Electric has been managing that for us. Twice a year, they sell them off. Each time, it's about $15,000 to $20,000 in the sale of those renewable energy credits.
Question, when do you anticipate, or do you, having to raise the residential fees again?
Depends on what the board tells us what we can do with our budget and where we stand. If the economic turn changes and the revenue goes down, then we would probably have to look at that. At this point in time, our strategy has always been that we want to maintain a 1-year operational balance, which should be right around $10 million. So you'll see right here in 2029, this changes from that tan over to the red. That would be approximately, a year to 2 years we're looking at. You would want to look at changing your fee structure in order to keep out of that area. The goal is that if you keep a year's worth of operational funding, should something catastrophic happen, then everything's covered and we're not scrambling. To recover from a big spend takes a while. And so you need to make sure that you're looking at that ahead of time and planning appropriately so that, for instance, when we built Prairie, we did a 1.5% rate increase for 3 or 5 years to build up the funding. And then the year that we built Prairie, we built not only a $14 million facility at Prairie, but we also did a landfill expansion that year. So as memory serves, it was like $21 million that the solid waste department expended in 1 year. So putting together that ahead of time makes it a little more palatable for our constituents because it's a $2 or $1 increase versus Bonner County went from 80 some odd dollars to 115 this year. That's difficult for your constituents to carry. So our job is to look to the future and make sure that we're planning ahead.
Good job. Keep going.
I think I've pretty much covered almost everything that's out there. There is, the strategy could cover some increases at Prairie at this point in time through 2042. I'm not ready to predict when that's going to be. Our main goal has been to focus on the pinch point that we have at Ramsey and then the landfill expansions that we're going to need to do in order to maintain the #1 asset that we have, which is the landfill. It saves the county a phenomenal amount of money, and it allows us to maintain as an enterprise fund, putting out, the department pays $840,000 to the general fund for the services that we receive because we're because we're an enterprise fund. And then the board's decision on the interest, that could be anywhere from $500,000 to $1.2 million that's going to the general fund as well. So solid waste dollars are doing a lot more work for the general fund and helping to contribute to what the county needs as it continues to grow.
Okay. Questions for Laureen or JP? None. Good job. Either you do a great job or it's all going over our heads, one or the other. But
Well,
it's easy to follow. You've done a great job.
It's very, very complex. The intention here is, again, to remind the board that it's a living document. It
Right.
changes based on the decisions
Absolutely.
that this board makes. So, we appreciate the opportunity to sit at the table to discuss what the plans are for solid waste dollars, for, what we intend to do. We try to always make sure that we communicate what the department needs, what the growth rates are. I could sit here and quote statistics to you. I love the numbers. Numbers don't lie. It's pretty phenomenal to talk about the rate of growth, the number of customers that come through. There's all kinds of stuff, but when it all comes down to brass tacks, it's about dollars and cents, and making sure that we stay on top of the funding mechanism that we have set aside for solid waste, and continue to provide that so that people can continue to throw away their garbage.
So question, with the growth, if we did have an economic downturn, you typically see less trash because there's less construction waste or things of that nature. How does that affect your revenue?
Same thing. Usually when the waste stream drops down, then the revenue drops down as well. This last year in 2020, I reduced our fees, so we were expecting a 3% to 5% decrease in the waste. I saw that in the solid waste fee, so the fee that is assessed with the tax bill. But on the commercial side, with COVID, Washington shut down, so Washington businesses shifted over and brought their projects into Idaho, so we trucked along and maintained the increase in revenue. In 2007, when the revenue
gonna
went
ask you
down,
that.
when the downturn, then the revenue went down as well. So that's why we look at that long-term growth of the waste stream from 94. The landfill opened in the middle of 93, so you can't really look at that one. But from 94 to the present, we're looking at about, overall, that period of time is about 4.2%.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you. Public comment? Hearing none. 10:37, meeting adjourned. Thanks again.